So when you import goods into Kenya, if they're subject to import taxes, then you're required to pay those. So even if you travel and you buy a dress that exceeds that limit, so the $500, then the requirement is that you'll pay for import taxes.
Did you listen to the Hot Breakfast this morning? Here's what you missed.
Talking about duties and taxes, and you saw the story the other day. It was a really heart-wrenching story. A couple flies in from the U.S. They're coming on their holiday vacation and wedding. They are carrying, the bride is obviously carrying her wedding dress in her suitcase.
Because, dudes, we just kunja our suit and just put it in there. We can iron later.
Exactly.
So as they get to customs.
As you get to customs, they are stopped and they're told, Funguas suitcase.
In fact, have you declared it? So now from this amount you asked, I think
around
300,000 shillings. That's $2,000 thereabout.
$2,000
as duty for wedding dress.
Yep. So they couldn't pay it, obviously. And what did they? They
had to leave the wedding dress there,
man.
and then come some other time.
Oh man!
And they really complained because this lady says she's a Nyehudi and this guy's Odiero, but they didn't support the Odiero. However, his aunt was carrying the wedding dress, and it's a whole story in there. It goes to show that there's no rush to get married.
No, that's not the moral of that story.
I'm playing with you.
So the question is, what is duty bound? What should be taxed and what should not be taxed? So joining us live in the studios, Peter Njenga. He's a senior manager, Customs, Global Trade and Excise at Deloitte. Peter Njenga, welcome to Hot 96.
Thank you, Jeff.
How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
Good. So when you heard this story, as we all did, were you as horrified as we were?
And flabbergasted. I've been looking forward to use that word this month. What went through your mind when you saw that?
Yeah, I think in my view, the communication was not done correctly. So there's a lot that's provided for in law that was not captured. So how they put it is that if you import personal effects and baggage that exceed $500, then you're required to account for import duties. So meaning if you're coming from the US, you have your clothing, you have your perfume, you have your phone. If that amount or the value of those items exceed $500, then you account for import duties.
Even if it's used items?
Even if it's used items. So that's how I think the public interpreted it.
Yeah.
And that's what has caused outrage in the public. But if you look at how the law is worded, and even how it's done by K.R.A. in practice. So there's a scanner at the airport where they scan, I think, all baggage to check whether there are any suspicious items. So remember, other than import duty, the authority is mandated to ensure that anything that is coming in is not restricted. So you can't come in with weapons, drugs, I think pornographic material. So all those items are restricted or prohibited. And it's their duty to ensure those don't come in undetected. So there'll be a scanner, then depending on what they see on the scanner, they can decide to verify the baggage. I think what has been causing a lot of outrage is how the examination of the baggage is done. So some people have complained that it's been very intrusive. People have queued, then you've opened my baggage, going through my personal items. So I think that's one of the areas where people are, making noise about. So when you import goods into Kenya, if they're subject to import taxes, then you're required to pay those. So even if you travel and you buy a dress that exceeds that limit, so the $500, then the requirement is that you'll pay for import taxes. So remember, the exemption is to facilitate travelers. So even for tourists, so if you come in, you have your camera, you have your, other consumable and non-consumable items that you'll use in Kenya before you travel back, those are exempt. If you're coming back as a person who's working outside Kenya, then you have those exemptions. But if you've traveled, bought a dress, bought a new item, bought a new phone, for example, that exceeds the limit, then that does not fall within what the intention of the law was. So, for example, the wedding dress in this case, the intention is not to exempt those. You did not travel with those items for your, to facilitate your travel, for example. So that's why I think for the wedding dress that import taxes would apply. One of the complaints we've had in the public is there needs to be a discussion on the $500 limit. And you cannot stop every person traveling to check whether they have an amount exceeding $500. That can be very inconveniencing. It can be very intrusive. I saw in the media, even the government, I think one of the cabinet secretaries making noise about tourism and how that will scare away
that's
tourists.
Who spoke about it last week, yeah?
Yeah. So I think what is key here is the government needs to be very careful in how they implement this law. So this law has been there for a while. I think since its inception in 2005.
Yeah. So the question is, why now?
Exactly. And yeah. So, and I think that's what has got so many people worried. So does it mean that this is a new law? Does it mean that, starting now, if I import or if I come in with my items exceeding $500, I need to pay for taxes? So that is not necessarily the case. The law has been there. It has been implemented over the years. And I think what happened is people who have had bad experiences at the airport, when they saw that tweet by K.R.A. So I think people shared the experiences, including that story about the wedding dress. But the law has been there. So the limit on $500 is well stipulated in law. The question is, how do you implement it in such a way that you don't inconvenience travelers?
There's a story, standstill at K.R.A. as many foreigners are stranded amid taxation claims at the airport. And this is very discouraging for visitors coming to Kenya, and we're trying to increase our tourism numbers.
If you look at laws in other countries, in progressive economies like the US, the UK, Canada, you'll find the same laws. In fact, that limit, if you look at the UK, for example, I think the limit is 390 pounds. Anything above that, you're supposed to pay for taxes. But the difference could be how they implement it.
Or what they ignore,
Yeah.
let's say cameras, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, I think you do it on a sample basis. You don't target everyone. You don't ask everyone to open their suitcases to check whether they have items which are subject to import duty. But the expectation of the law is that everyone will declare what is dutiable and go through the right channel, which you said, not so many people will go through the right channel.
Let's say Saudi, and they've worked there for 16, 18, 20 months, a few years, and they want to come back home to their families. Of course, they pass by the airport, they pick up some stuff to bring home. They get to Kenya, fungwa hiyo sanduku, and it becomes such a hassle for someone who's been hustling for years. It's so unfair. I mean, that's what people are saying. It's so unfair.
Everyone is required or has a responsibility to pay for taxes on imported goods. So whether you're coming with them as a gift or for trade, the expectation is that you pay taxes. You're allowed to come in with new items, which may include gifts, not exceeding $500, and that's what needs to be discussed. $500. So that specific provision was introduced into law in 2010. So do we need to have another look at the $500? So that it's updated with the current economy. And if you look at, I think K.R.A. clarified that initial tweet that was sent out. So there was a public notice that came out last week.
Right.
And they clarified everything. So they said $500 for new items only. And they also indicated that they are having another look at that amount.
Yeah, their clarification wasn't very clear. But the other question is, Nick here is a very generous guy. If he goes to Dubai and comes back with 3 iPhones, and he tells
Which is very highly likely. And I said this for my chance,
and he tells customs, these are gifts.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he says, okay, how much do they cost? Just say, you know.
And the purpose of buying them there is because it's cheaper.
Much cheaper than here.
Yeah. So whether they're gifts or not, unfortunately, based on the current law, the expectation is that you pay.
Or I just remove them and put them in my pocket, all three of them.
And the charges. Your pockets will be very full.
Yeah, but I understand the pain, coming back with those items, and the example you gave from Saudi, someone has worked so hard, they've bought gifts for their families, and they go ahead and tax that. And that's why I think we need to have another look at how this law is implemented. You don't do it for everyone. You do it on a sample basis. Of course, travelers should also just, in terms of what I spoke about, the red channel, green channel, if you have something to declare, you declare. But I think in my view, for purposes of ensuring that there is smooth clearance at the airport, then let it be done very carefully, in a very systematic manner, to ensure that you don't experience delays. I've seen in countries like I think Canada and the UK, there's an app where you can declare any items that are dutable. I think in one country 72 hours before, the other one is 5 years before you travel. So that by the time you're traveling, you've already declared what's dutable, you've paid for taxes. As opposed to you come in, you give in your Form F88, you start discussing how much, so what's the value of the goods. I think that's the other gray area, assuming you don't have a receipt. You have an iPhone, you don't have a receipt. Or maybe you got it at a lower price than what K.R.A. thinks the price should be. Then that brings in another discussion that may lead to delays. So maybe one of the things they need to consider is, can we, can we have an app or a portal where people can declare these items before they travel? I think that can really help to speed up things at the baggage hall.
Peter, when you travel to Europe, you see this it's almost standard. People going to the red lane or red side, and others going to the green. Here, I'm sorry to say, in Africa, we don't do that. I mean, there's that level of trust is not there. Nafika nyumbani alafu nalipa tax. Never. You want to try and get away with it as much as you can. So how do we build that trust with K.R.A., with the customs guys?
One of the ways we can, improve this process and build trust is through public education. Not so many people know what the law provides. So what is dutable, what is not dutable? It's not very clear to the public. So a lot of public sensitization on this. I'm sure so many people are hearing red channel, green channel for the first time. And maybe that's why, in practice, you don't find people going through the red channel. So a lot of public education, and maybe improve the process of declaring these items through customs, so that it's not done at the time of entry into the country.
That's kind of. Were you surprised when you saw the outcry and outrage by Kenyans after that story? Were you surprised?
So when I saw the tweet and the reaction after, not very surprised. And I don't think that was K.R.A.'s intention. Maybe that tweet was not very comprehensively done. So having worked at K.R.A. and seeing how this is done at the airport, I think it's aligned with the law. So how this was communicated was not aligned with what happens in practice. And because not so many people know what the law provides, if you go ahead and tweet something, with very, little information, just talk about $500, you don't clarify whether it's unused or new items, then of course it will lead to a lot of outrage in the public.
I guess maybe a lot of people just don't have the information that they require because, I mean, Jeff, you pass by the airport with new stuff all the time.
All the time.
So it's just up to you as an individual to know the things you'll need to declare, like that wedding dress situation or suit, and just carry on with life. Because a lot of people also, I think, on Twitter responded without facts.
Yeah, but how many of you, if you go to Singapore, if you go to Malaysia, and you buy yourself some clothes, some jeans, some sneakers, like you love sneakers, are you going to come and go to K.R.A and say, hey, I have these to declare? Are you gonna, no, honestly, are you going to do that? You.
Do you want me to be honest?
Of course.
Like on the radio, no. So that laugh, you know what the response is?
You know, everyone knows Nico Biambo. If you do that, this one has to go through the red channel. You have that you said on radio.
Yes.
No, I declare and I pay my taxes.
And everybody fills out that form when you land, right? I mean, there's that form you're given by the flight attendants.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the form you're required to fill in. I think the thing is as Kenyans, we need to understand your question on which items are, restricted. So I spoke about the perfumes, the alcohol, the cigarettes, fabrics. So those are not allowed, but I mentioned the limits which are allowed. So if you exceed the limits, then you're required to declare. Any other item that's new and exceeds $500, you need to declare.
Once I carried a box of cigars, and they saw it in the scanner, and they asked me, these are illegal here because they're from Cuba, and they destroyed them right there in my presence.
Oh, in the U.S.?
Yes, at JFK.
What?
In my presence.
But Americans wanakuanga hivyo, pole. Huku ingepita. Yeah, just tell you, Nini smoking is harmful to your health. You're like, go to hell. So I guess it's because also duty free. They'll just tell you this is the limit, and it's written there, I think, and that's why you maintain it sealed. Because once you open it now, it becomes also dutable.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But okay, a lot of people carry alcohol, again, from duty-free in the Middle East or in transit.
Yeah.
All that you have to declare when you come?
You have to
above
declare
a certain amount.
Above 1 liter for spirits, 2 liters for wine, anything beer, you have to declare.
Beer, huwezi kuleta duty-free, kuna beer.
Yeah.
I guess also because we are talking about airports a lot, we have forgotten that there's buses and customs at the border and all that stuff. Are they also as strict at the border?
In those borders, I think what most people import will be clothes and so not strict, so it wouldn't be your alcohol or cigarettes so people will be buying trade goods. So they're very keen to check for people who are doing biashara. Then you've concealed some items as personal effects. Yeah, and an example is Uganda. I think so many people buy new clothes from Uganda for selling to Kenya. I think they're cheap or something. So officers at Malaba, for example, will be very keen to check that you haven't hidden new items in your luggage. Yeah.
But Peter, okay, at the end of the day, you as an individual, me flying in, and I bring a couple of bottles of whiskey and a couple of packets of cigarettes. I mean, how is that going to dent the economy? Is that going to give a difference to wherever cigarettes are bought or wherever alcohol is bought? It's not gonna. It's just it's personal consumption.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw someone tweet about that. We need to do a cost-benefit analysis of the approach that maybe the government will be taking to secure taxes on imported, personal effects. So looking at how much you can get out of it versus, the inconvenience you're causing people, you could be discouraging some tourists from traveling Kenya. So if someone has a very bad experience at the airport, chances are they won't travel back. Word goes around that tourists are being harassed.